Well, the Australian government has set an ambitious goal of becoming the world's most cyber-secure nation by the end of the decade. A sector-wide conference is underway in Canberra. It spotlights how the industry and businesses will need to evolve and invest to thwart developing cyber threats. Joining me live is Australian Information Security Association Chair, Damien, Manuel, for more on this. Thanks for your time. So that's the aim. Where do we rank at the moment, do you think? Are we middling? Are we lower than that?
I'd say we've lost time over the last 7 to 10 years from a cybersecurity standpoint. Criminals have become far more advanced, more rapidly and quickly. As a nation, we're behind both in our skills development and building to help support businesses, as well as being able to leverage the technology and leverage the capacity, I guess, within ASD and other entities to actually defend the country as well.
There's a few different areas. Let's start with government. How well do you think our government has prepared our major infrastructure? And obviously these days, infrastructure is a different word, right? Mobile phone towers are infrastructure, anything to do with banking is infrastructure. Do you feel as though we've got things well prepared there, that we're not vulnerable? Because these attacks could only come more if you think of the changing world and threats from China, North Korea, Russia, and where we're involved geopolitically now as well.
Yep, correct. And in 2018, there was new infrastructure designation for 11 new sectors. That includes tertiary education providers, grocery providers like Coles and Woolworths, and other data providers as well. So it's more areas outside of your traditional banking. And I think the concern is that these become areas that could become potentially vulnerable to attacks from foreign governments. And we've seen sort of the disruption of the pandemic and the crisis that it caused around sort of Coles and Woolworths, and that's why that sector was now classed as critical. So I think there's a lot more that could be done.
Right, so that's the government, you say, work to do there. Then we get to business. Yep. The obvious one's a big business, but often in this sort of environment, when the hacks happen, big business are out there right now. They're spending money on it, they're preparing. They've got the resources to do so. Middle, smaller sized businesses that are still collecting a lot of our data, are they almost the bigger worry?
They are, because they form part of the supply chain for the bigger businesses. So if you want to attack a bigger business, you don't attack the bigger business directly, but you go after their suppliers that they're leveraging, because that's the weak point. And if you look at the stats at the moment, there's a cybercrime that's reported every 7 minutes. Business, in order for it to...
And then what's not being reported too, because you worry about reputation and...
And the other challenge you've got for a lot of small business and organisations is, where do they go to report it? When an incident happens, there are multiple obligations on them, and we need a simplified, streamlined process to make it easier for them to report as well.
And then just getting the workers, even if you want one?
Yep.
Is that just a question of immigration? Are we going to be able to convince Australians? Because a lot of these, I've had so many different people on about this, and you're like, aren't these well-paying careers? And is it just not sort of exciting enough for people? They think it's a dull role, so they don't invest in the course? Is that what's happening?
We've got a problem where the education system's broken. So think of that as the supply side, and we're not educating people properly or giving them physical hands-on experience. And what's happening is a lot of students are coming out of university in TAFE and they cannot get a job in cybersecurity. And on the reverse side...
So hang on, they're training to get a job in cybersecurity.
Correct. Yep, and they can't get it.
But not getting one.
Yep.
Why not?
And so the biggest gap in the education system is work experience and hands-on.
Right.
And so we don't have courses that have mandatory hands-on learning components to work with industry.
Even though it's it's less a sort of profession and more a craft almost, isn't it? It's like, you need the flying hours. Okay, and the other one I was interested in is the everyday consumer. Many of my viewers, myself, I've been interested in the tech industry talking about a sort of slip, slop, slap campaign. What would be the equivalent pithy little message you'd have for people out there?
It's really probably about stopping, thinking and then acting, because even cybersecurity experts are vulnerable to scams. We did some studies and we found that about 9% of cybersecurity experts who should know better will fall victim to scams. So if you think about the general public, they need a huge amount of help in terms of awareness and how to identify and trust less online.
So, one example, she'll forgive me for saying this, I think. My wife got a text message and said, oh, we had this bill, and I clicked on a link and I was like, hang on. You didn't click on the link. Is there ever a link you should click on just from a text message?
No.
Never, ever. No organisation should ever be texting you a link.
Correct, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. If you click on a link could be enough to compromise your device, whether it be your PC, your Mac or your mobile phone.
And the point is they won't send a link, they'll send an email, you'll call them, whatever it might be. but don't click on the link. So that'd be part of, if you like, stop, don't click on the link. Any other really basic ones that people often fall for?
I think trust less. And we've unfortunately adopted a stance where if somebody's communicating with me online, I'm more likely to trust them than I am trusting somebody having a personal discussion. So we really need to change that behaviour and get people to trust less online. Because the number of people that are, just like you said, your wife will be clicking on links because they've received a link from somebody. That's a huge challenge that we need to overcome.